I fell 44 feet rock climbing and nearly died. I've never been more grateful to be alive and never felt more driven to share the teachings from Breathe for Change with the entire world, which is why just 8 days after the fall, after my life almost ended, we decided to start this podcast. Just take 3 deep breaths. If you're in a moment of stress or panic, just take 3 breaths. It'll help you regulate yourself, and then you can respond from that place of awareness. And literally, I fell 44 feet. What did I do? I took 3 breaths. Every time my daughters, Zoe and Aaliyah, go up and down the stairs, my body, I am so scared they're going to fall.
What an incredible human experience we're having, and also challenging to have something happen that's both like a blessing and also trauma.
Even the simple little things like my daughter running up to me and being like, mama, 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 and like giving me a hug, like that's just like, I'm used to that stuff. But you better bet that when I came back from the hospital, I got mama, 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 it's like tears, like beauty. I am the luckiest person in the world. I'm Ilana Nankin, the founder and co-CEO of Breathe for Change, which is a movement that's transformed the lives of over 100,000 teachers and 20 million students over the last 10 years. And last week, I fell 44 feet rock climbing and nearly died. I've never been more grateful to be alive and never felt more driven to share the teachings from Breathe for Change with the entire world, which is why, just 8 days after the fall, after my life almost ended, we decided to start this podcast.
I am so grateful to Ilana, and I will never forget 10:47 p.m. last Wednesday when I got the text that you fell 44 feet and you were still in the hospital and they were running tests. Like, my heart stopped. I did not know what that meant for you, but I knew that I was praying that you were okay. And honestly, it reminded me, just how precious life is, and reminded me of a moment when I brushed with death when I was driving 65 miles an hour on the ice, slipped over the road, crashed into a snowbank, flipped the car, and skid like 500 yards into a railroad tie. And just like how these moments that you just went through, and I want to learn so much more, how these moments open our eyes to what really matters in life. And I would love to hear more, like what's here for you? Like what's alive for you? Like just 8 days after this moment when you almost died.
It's like my heart is literally beating so hard. It's so fresh. I just come home from the hospital literally exactly a week ago. I'm so attuned to the synchronicities and the awe and the beauty of life, and how many things had to go right in order for me to literally have this second shot, to continue to grow this movement with you, to continue to take care of my 2 and 4-year-old babies, to be able to do what I love, to teach, and to have my physical body. So I know, a little bit, but I was in a rock climbing 101 class, and they used in this class auto belays where you're supposed to clip yourself in. And so I clipped myself in. We had 10 minutes of, exploration. I climbed to the top. At the top, I asked the instructor, how do I fall? And he told me, you get off the wall like you're standing, and then you sit your butt down like you're in a chair. And I was like, oh, like chair pose, So I got down, fell how you're supposed to, because I was clipped in. And then I went to another wall, climbed up the wall, literally not realizing that I wasn't clipped in. It's like I'm so used to being like on belay on, someone doing it for me. I'd never done auto belay, and there was no one watching me. So I get to the top, 44 feet, and I remember the teacher saying, go back like you're standing up, go down, like sink your butt down. And I just talked myself through it. And all of a sudden it was like I was literally all the way on the ground within a second or two. And somehow, this is like some universal thing happening. My hands knew to grabbed the rope right in front of me. That's why you see they're all completely slashed, burned, wounded. But what happened was I was like aligned. So my feet were aligned, my butt was aligned, and I fell, went back, hit my head. Literally, like all of that. The fact that I like grabbed the rope and then my husband and my daughter came in a few seconds later and were present when I was almost passing out, and the paramedics came, and then my friend was there to take my daughter, and then I went into the ambulance and I got my consciousness back, and then I went into the ER, and they were literally shocked that I was talking. It's like, how did this happen? You'd normally be dead, paralyzed, spinal injury, brain damage. Like, they're like, we don't see this. I was in the trauma unit in the most intense hospital in San Francisco. And after x rays and a CT scan, literally everything came out clear. And they're like, I asked the doctor, because I didn't know, what's the likelihood that or like, how often do people die from a fall like that? And he said, at 40 feet, 50% of the people at least die on the fall.
That's remarkable. It's terrible.
Yeah. I loved.
Can we just, because I feel like 44 feet, like that's like taller than like what, like a 3-story building that you're falling? Like, so you have like seconds in the air when you're like aware that you're falling.
My dad looked it up online and he said that it's 30, I probably fell about 30 miles an hour, but like that quickly. And the rope didn't stop the fall. It wasn't like it slowed me down, like I grabbed it. It just sliced me, and I think it aligned me perfectly. And what's wild is that postpartum, because I had a baby 2 years ago, I've had all these hip issues. And ever since, not only is my body like, I'm walking, I'm moving, I'm dancing, I'm, gosh, loving life, but my hip is better. It's like,
No, that's what?
unbelievable.
Literally your fall like realigned your hip. That's the most absurd thing I've ever heard. That's a miracle.
I mean, I'm like imagining some amazing moms postpartum coming up to me like, hey, like I've got some hip issues. Like, do you have any recommendations for, some way I can support this? And I'm like, well, you can fall 44 feet, like with nothing there. And, if it's like me, you'll get lucky.
Well, I know. Like one of the things that's most inspiring to me about how you're holding this is just how much you're seeing the blessings and the positives of it, and how much it's like realigning you with that. But I also want to just acknowledge, like, that's really intense. Like, what's like going on for you?
Yeah.
Like, as that's happening, like, are you aware? Like, what, is it like a life flash before your eyes? Is it like a,
Like while I was falling.
yeah. And then immediately afterwards, like, I'm just really, because like, yeah, I just, I think, want to know.
So as I was falling, I remember in the air being like, I'm falling. But it was not, it was like an awareness, but it was there was no thinking like around it. I just was like, I'm falling. And then somehow cat style grabbed the rope. But the crazy part is right away, I got up, which should not have happened because safety precautions should have been better. But I like walked like 30 feet to a chair. Then people like all came around, and I was just like, I've been twice in my life to the point of almost passing out, like seeing stars, like knowing I'm almost gone. And one of those instances at the dentist, I had an allergic reaction. It was like just a year ago. So it's like present enough for me to know, oh, wow, I'm close. And so they were like asking me questions like, are you seeing what's going on? And I was like, call 911. I did tell them to call 911. And then I could, all I was doing was like taking deep breaths and trying to stay like conscious. And then all of a sudden, my husband and my 4-year-old daughter, Aaliyah, walk in because I told Yen to bring Aaliyah because she wanted to see Mama rock climbing. Great first intro. And someone's like, is this what she normally looks like? And he's like, no, she's white in the face and she's green. And Aaliyah goes, Mama, Mama. And I couldn't talk. I couldn't talk at first. And Yen thought I was having a stroke, which is so traumatizing for him. And she was like, Mommy, why aren't you talking to me? And so, like, I just remember being so present to the external world, but not being able to interact with it. It was very interesting. But it wasn't a fear based, and you know me, I can get super anxious, Michael. You know me better than anyone. So I wasn't anxious. I was just in survival mode. I was in shock. And then the paramedics came and they did the whole neck brace. I was in the, what's it called? It's like a bed. Yeah. And then like they wheeled me out very quickly into the ambulance, and my 4-year-old daughter was looking at me through the window. Luckily, a friend was there, so she took Aaliyah, and Yen could go with me in the ambulance. But the whole way, I got consciousness back, and I was like my normal self, like inappropriate, funny, vulgar, like appreciating life. I didn't know what had happened, but I was not in pain other than my excruciating burns in my hands. And so I was a little bit focused on that, but it was weird because I have a low pain tolerance. At least I thought I did. But then the fact that I went through such a near death experience, it was like the pain was just pain. And I was like, I'm freaking alive.
Mm.
And like for 4 straight days, I was in a complete state of bliss, internal relaxation, which again is not my typical way of being, joy. I'd never felt more connected to community ever. The love that poured in from thousands of people within days who, you know, in some way, shape, or form found out about the accident was extraordinary. And I just was at like in complete awe of the miracle of life and of my blessing that I received to like be able to continue doing the work that we do, which is such a deep reason of why I'm here.
I want to ask you more about that, because I think, you know, so much of the time, so many of us are moving through life in habit, you know, or doing things we're kind of used to, and then something like this comes around. It feels like it just like completely disrupts any like normalcy and like puts you in a totally different state. Like how are you kind of coming back to your life now, and like as you come back to your life, like what feels important to you?
You know, it's interesting because in our Breathe for Change trainings, we're always talking about gratitude. And I could teach about gratitude and the power of gratitude any day, but it's super different to actually live what you teach. Whenever I tell our educators, you know, gratitude is so amazing because it forces us to focus on what is working versus what's not working. And I feel like this was the most intense, extreme version of embodying that understanding, that teaching. It's forced me, you know, it's like, you know, sometimes I'll feel, my limiting belief I've always had is I'm not good enough. So it's like I can focus on all the ways in which I'm not good enough, or my relationship isn't enough. What we're doing in Breathe for Change, it's not enough. We got to do more. Oh, like I love community, but I don't have enough community. It's like I'm often that itty bitty shitty community inside my head is like focusing on the thing that's not working versus looking at, holy cow, look at all these incredible things that are right in front of my eyes, that are beautiful, that are magnificent. Even the simple little things like my daughter running up to me and being like, mama, 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 and like giving me a hug. Like, that's just like, I'm used to that stuff. But you better bet that when I came back from the hospital, I got mama, mama, mama. It's like tears, like beauty. And then when I went into one of our Zoom sessions with, you know, 500 educators that are in our master's program, And they're like, Ilana, Ilana. And I was able to like connect with these teachers again. I'm just like, I am the luckiest person in the world. And there is so much love around me. And so this, like, I feel like that, the itty bitty shitty committee, that voice that we all have inside our heads that's like, you're not good enough. You're not smart enough. You need more. That it's quiet. It's weird, Michael. It's quiet.
Yeah, well, that actually leads me to like another question I wanted to ask you because, as someone who's known you for 12 years in so many different ways, very intimately, co-creating this thing for a decade now, I've gotten to witness the struggles you've had, feeling deeply connected. You connect so deeply with people and as a facilitator, but also like, I know you've struggled with the idea of something greater or a connection to whether you call it God or the universe or something beyond yourself. And I want to know, like, having gone through this experience and the literally like 1 in a million sort of chance that you came out with such relatively minor injury, like, how do you explain that? How do you relate to that? Has this had any impact on how you think about yourself and how you relate to the world around you?
Oh, in an extreme sense. And you would understand this more than anyone because you know me so well. Well, it's so funny because we've been creating this human intelligence framework together. And we've got these like 5 layers of human intelligence: the cognitive, the emotional, the social, the somatic, like the intelligence of our body, and then the universal, right? Something greater than ourselves. And as you and I were creating this framework, it's like, ugh, that universal piece, like I struggle with it. Like, how do I, like, I know that I'm so purpose driven, but it's kind of always been this like, can I trust? Like, and I get like anxious and I'm like, don't always trust that like I'm being held or that the universe has got me. And this was like, I remember calling you and be like, I understand universal intelligence now. Because I just know that like whatever you want to call it, God, the universe, something greater than you, spirit, whatever it is, like I was being watched, and all the like the love and the heart that I've poured into the world, into, my students as a teacher, into our educators that we support, into my family, into all of our friends. It's like it came back to me, and I was like, nothing else can explain it other than that. And it was so interesting. I mean, the amount of messages, hundreds of messages that I received like 2 days after were like, the universe was watching out for you. Like, and it was different people's words. Like some used God, some used universe, some used like energy, some used karma, whatever, each of us relate to that thing that's greater than ourselves differently. But it was like everyone was like, that thing. It worked.
How is that with you now 8 days later? Like, is that something that's continuing in your life? Like, was it a one-time thing? Like, how are you holding that for yourself?
It totally is still with me. It's in this it's transformed into this belief or it's like serendipity. Like believe that like serendipity can happen because the amount of things that needed to go the way they went in order for me to be alive, and in order for like all of the pieces to have worked the way it did to have this outcome where I'm talking to you right now, is insane. I mean, there's nothing else that can explain it. So there's like the serendipity piece, and there's like awe. Like I just see beauty. I'm not as frazzled or frustrated or anxious. Now, mind you, I just went through a huge trauma. And so there's like moments where all of a sudden, like I'll be super freaked out that my hands are not going to ever function or have mobility the way that they did. And then I'll go back into like my fear. But then very quickly, I'm like pulled back. You're alive. This is a miracle. And then it's like, even if this were the case, who cares? Like I still, so it's this interesting thing where I see it's not like I'm always in this state of like, divine connection, but I'm so quick to notice when I'm out and I have this anchor to come back to, which is so powerful.
What an incredible human experience we're having, and also challenging to have something happen that's both like a blessing and also trauma. You were telling me a couple of days ago, I think there were times when you would just be, and I know so many of us hold trauma in different ways, and it can be really hard. I know you were sharing that now when you see your daughters walk down the stairs, there's like a party that just like, yeah, like that just like can't help but clasp up and want to like make sure they're safe in a way that's pretty contracted. And, I think I mean, do you want to share about your journey with that? I know so many of us as educators ourselves, but then also the students that we teach are supporting people that are really experiencing trauma. And there's a way in which the body can really, contract and be hard to work with. So I want to, make sure that you have space to share about that too.
Thank you for that. Yeah. So from Wednesday till Saturday, I was in like, life is a miracle. I can't believe this awe state. Saturday night, my husband said to me, Leah, the one who saw me in the accident, said, Daddy, I'm having bad thoughts. And he said, what are you thinking? And she said, remember when we went to Legoland and we did that movie ride that goes up and down? And I just imagined that mommy fell and died. And that took me from this state of like, gratitude to like trauma. Like I sunk, I sobbed, I felt the impact and the weight of the fall on me and my family. And I didn't even, so that then that night I was really anxious, so anxious about my hands that like my best friend, Beatrice, like put me in touch with her plastic surgeon, wound specialist friend that like checked out my hands the next day and reassured me it's going to be okay. And then the next day I was like, we have 3 stories in our house. San Francisco house, they're all tall and, narrow. So every time my daughters, Zoe and Aaliyah, go up and down the stairs, I literally, my body, like I can't look. It's like, I don't know if it's like PTSD symptoms or something like that, but I am so scared they're going to fall. And I'm so scared. Like it's like my body, it's just the experience of the trauma that happened a week ago becomes immediately present in my body. And it's not like I'm thinking about it. It's just my nervous system, my whole bodily reaction. It's like, it goes straight back to the moment. And that's what trauma is, right? Trauma is not something can reactivate the trauma in any given moment. And it's not like it's that connected, but it's living the past trauma in the present moment and just comes. We've taught, you and I teach about this all the time. And this is the first time I've experienced that level of understanding.
How does that shift your lens as an educator as you think about the students and the teachers that we serve who may be going through things like that themselves?
It's interesting because I've always, so many of our educators experience secondhand trauma, right? They're supporting students from all walks of life, many of whom are experiencing really challenging things, whether it's poverty, abuse, you name it. This idea of secondhand trauma is you take on the experience of trauma that someone else. So it's like you probably experienced some secondhand trauma. Definitely my husband and daughter did because of the fall with me. But until this moment, I've always been in this seat of experiencing secondhand trauma, not the depth of trauma that I experienced for myself. And so obviously everyone experiences trauma. I've experienced trauma, but nothing like this before.
Yeah. And how does this, what does this shift for you? Because many of the students we serve do, right? So what does this do as far as understanding their reality or shifting some lens? Like, help us, those of us who might not have that experience or so fresh, like what can we learn? What can we learn from this?
I mean, it makes one, I'm so much more empathetic to to other people's experiences. And different people can experience any event or situation very differently. Like something that can be traumatic for you may not be traumatic for me and vice versa. But what it did for me is it made me realize how critically important it is for our education system to be teaching educators and students the skills to navigate these types of stressors and traumas that all of us experience in our lives, whether they're huge like mine just was or small. We all experience different forms and types of trauma, and we have to focus on this in school. It is absurd that people think that our students can focus on math, focus on science, focus on their lit, or like, just take a test if they're experiencing these types of stressors or trauma in their body. We have to first and foremost prioritize the health and the well-being of our students and our educators so that they can be like regulated in their bodies so they can effectively teach and learn. And that's what you and I do, and that's what we stand for.
So, and the tools you're talking about, there are things like breath work, there are things like deep breathing, there's somatic practices like different movements in your body. Like, what are some of the things that you're finding are helpful with you right now that teachers and students might be able to learn from?
Well, it's super interesting because, as you know, I teach hundreds of, these mind body wellness practices and social emotional learning strategies all the time. And one of the most foundational ones I teach are 3 collective breaths. Just take 3 deep breaths. If you're in a moment of stress or panic, just take 3 breaths. It'll help you regulate yourself, and then you can respond from that place of awareness. And literally, I fell 44 feet. What did I do? I took 3 breaths. It was like and then as I was in the stretcher, I remember, because I've taught this stuff, wow, when you elongate the exhale, your nervous system goes from like this sympathetic state where you're like fight, flight, which my body was in extreme shock, to a parasympathetic state, like rest or digest. And so like the knowing of these practices allowed me in the most heightened state of trauma in my life to come back to center.
So you were literally in the gurney or in the stretcher in the ambulance, like doing deep exhale breathing?
Literally, like my hands were burning like literal fire. I just can't explain. And I was just like, and the paramedics were like asking me all these questions, and I'm sitting there like, take a deep breath in. Okay, lengthen your exhale.
Did they comment about it?
Well, they were like, who are you? Yeah. And I was joking with them. I was like, I teach some breathing practices for a living. So I'm using my tools.
That's amazing. That's amazing that you were able to access that in such an intense, traumatic moment. Like, what do you think enabled you to do that? Obviously you teach this stuff, of course, but like, how can others who, who may be in heightened scenarios, maybe when all things are easy, it's easier to sit and take 3 deep breaths, but in those stressful moments, whether it's with a fall like this, or it's a student, unleashing an angry outburst in class, or or even threatening violence, like how did you actually access that? And how can others do that too? What do you think it was?
I think what it honestly was, it's like when I actually just paid attention, because I was really observing my body. I was like, what is happening in my body right now? And in that moment of awareness, it's like, oh, I just need to breathe. And luckily, I have access to these tools, and that's what we teach in our trainings and our master's program. And so it was like at this point for me, it was like, because I've practiced enough in my life, right? I've cultivated a consistent practice. It just brought me right there. I didn't have to think about it. My body automatically went for what the tools have taught me, which was amazing. And that's what our teachers often say happens to them, is like, boom. I just knew in that moment I couldn't have expected it. I couldn't have planned it. But like all of a sudden, I was doing like, these sun breaths.
But it's those repetitions, right? It's those long years, many years of repetition that let that happen. That's not just something it's like practice over time that gets you there. Because I met you before you did these practices.
No, you're the reason. Oh my God, Michael, I'll never forget in the beginning of our relationship. First of all, when I met Michael, he was like your dad had just died. You were in a state of what am I doing with my life? Seeking purpose. You were meditating by a tree for hours every day. I remember the tree. You're about to you like gave up your rent, about to move to Bali. And yet you were so committed to your practice and to this like thing that's bigger than yourself. And I remember you being like, I was like, what are you going to do that's next? And you're like, well, I, I'll know through the practice. And I was like, what is going on?
Well, it led me here. It led me to you and to Breathe for Change. So I'm super grateful for that. And I do think I really have seen, myself. But given that we're talking about your story right now, I have seen, like, I think you would have reacted to this a lot differently 10 or 12 years ago. Like, I don't know that you'd be sitting here, on a podcast, spreading this message to the world, like taking it, honestly, letting this be an opportunity to even expand your impact and even more live your purpose from what could have been something that takes you the totally opposite direction. Right. And so it's beautiful to see how you're holding this and how you're responding to it and how, I'm thinking back at all the different challenges we've faced along the way and how like when we've been able to hold this understanding that, the challenges in life can also help us understand how to be even more aligned and even more focused on what matters most. It's really beautiful to see. And just want to acknowledge and celebrate you for that, because I think it's taken a lot of work for you to get to where you are with this. And it's such a part of what makes you such an inspiring leader in this movement and someone that so many other educators, learn from. Because of course you're very human and you're on your own journey, but and so beautiful to see you make these steps.
Well, I just also thank you so much. It's so sweet, Michael. And I want to acknowledge you because you transformed my life since the moment I met you. And you opened my eyes to all of the things that we now teach. I wouldn't have had access to that, but like you, because you lived it, you like showed me the way in some way, shape, or form. And then when I led our first training, I'll never forget, I was like, Michael, you got to come. 34 teachers. And you came in, and all these teachers, I was teaching them how to breathe and move and be in community and not feel so isolated. And you like brought out your little journal. And I know what happens when you journal. I know it's a
Yeah, you
poem.
do. You do.
I know it's a poem. And then so everyone's like, who's that guy, that weird guy just standing in the corner? And I was like, this is Michael. He's my dear friend and advisor. At that time, you were like teaching me a few things about how to start something because you're an entrepreneur. And then you read the poem and everyone cried.
Yeah, I remember that moment.
Yeah.
Made a big impact on my life and all of ours. And then as I am now, I was just so inspired by, such givers like teachers, just doing such inner work to learn to take care of themselves so that they can give even more and to really break the cycle that often happens of just stress and overwhelm and burnout that I experienced in my life prior, and how these practices really helped me with. And it's just, yeah, it's such a beautiful gift to give back to givers, fill up their cups, help them keep their own cups full, and let that be, let the ripple effects really grow from there. But yeah, Ilana, I just want to celebrate you and encourage you to like deeply lean into the support you have from me, to the support you have from our team, from our movement, and to know that, you're held in this journey and that it's okay to go through the downs of it, the moments of contraction and fear, the, the ups and the downs, but to also let those downs be okay, because you're human too and you're held, and we're all here for you. So
thank you so much. I'm so grateful for you. So Michael and I are in it for the long haul. We're doing this podcast. Follow along with us on these episodes. And also, if you're interested in the work we do at Breathe for Change, go to our website, breatheforchange.com. Thanks, y'all.